Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Christine Guilfoyle, president of SeeHer. Christine, it is a pleasure to be with you, particularly during Women's History Month, and we're delighted to welcome you to the show. Welcome, Christine.
Deborah, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for having me.
No, I'm delighted, and as I mentioned, it seems appropriate that we're talking about new SeeHer initiatives during Women's History Month. But before we get into some of those topics, just for the benefit of our global audience, would you begin just by briefly telling us about SeeHer's mission and about some of your members?
Sure, it's my pleasure, and thank you so much for asking, because ultimately, as a nonprofit that sits within the Association of National Advertisers, I think it's important for everyone to understand that our mission is really the bedrock of everything that we do for our members and for the industry. So the SeeHer mission is committed to increasing the representation and accurate portrayal of all women and girls to achieve gender equality and drive business growth in the global marketing and media ecosystems now and for generations to come. Right?
Well,
so that's a pretty
that's
lofty
aspirational.
mission.
Yes, that's certainly aspirational if it's even for generations to come, should they even need it. But okay, well, keep going, keep going.
Well, and
I didn't.
I would love to say, Deborah, that we won't need it. But I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit later about the benchmarks and the progress. So I'll leave that for that section. But at this point, what I can tell you is that Gen Z is not optimistic that gender inequality will be eradicated in their lifetime. So ultimately, you asked about our members. Our members are the world's leading marketers, agencies, media companies, platforms, research organizations that are committed on behalf of themselves, their brands, and/or their clients to transform that representation and portrayal. Ultimately, we know that if we're able to do that, first and foremost, it drives business growth. But secondly, it helps to transform society and culture. And our tagline is, if you can see her, you can be her. And ultimately, marketers and media have that wonderful opportunity because of the content they put out into the zeitgeist to make that, if you can see her, you can be her, a reality, not just a dream.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think sometimes we forget about how important or how intrinsically connected both brands and media are to contemporary culture, or
Yes.
whether they're holding up the mirror to it, or whether they, in the best of cases, shining a light on what could be a better situation. And I think we really do forget that. We look at them as industries, we look at them as businesses, and we forget again how involved they are. Just a quick question, and
Yeah,
sorry
sure.
to even run through it. I do, being a veteran of the industry, and certainly I think having attended enough industry events from all of the associations. But I do remember several years ago, in the pre-COVID era, being at ANA Masters and seeing the first introduction to SeeHer, and I realize, the organization is what, 6 years old or something.
Yeah, it's actually 7 years old. Time
Oh,
flies
yes,
when you
yes.
are fighting the gender equality game. So in 2016, SeeHer was launched with President and Mrs. Obama at the State of Women's Conference at the White House.
Hmm.
And that same year, SeeHer, through Bob Leodes's leadership at the ANA, had the opportunity to be revealed to the industry at the Masters of Marketing.
Mhm.
So it
So
all
what
happened in 2016.
so then what was the genesis of it? Was it a government initiative, or how did it start? Did
No,
the media or marketers say, "Well, we need to do something"? I'm just curious. I mean,
sure,
because
sure.
it's so critical. Origins are so critical, you know?
It's so important, and really it comes down to this. Again, true to the ANA mission, we serve the marketer. And marketers were coming forth recognizing that they needed a little bit more intentionality, some resources, and ultimately they were prepared to fund the launch of SeeHer. We are a membership-based organization. So when we launched in 2016 through 2019, it was only marketers at for those 3-year period that contributed dues towards membership, that allowed the mission to be launched and the early momentum of the movement to begin. And then after 2019, we opened up the doors for agencies and media companies to join us, right? Because ultimately it takes a village. Obviously, having the agencies involved with the marketers as partners, prioritizing gender equality principles throughout the workstream funnels. And we know that media has this unbelievable opportunity, and in many, many instances, they're committed to transforming society and culture. So once 2019 came, we really opened it up and allowed industry to participate in membership.
Interesting. Whether we say it takes a village or it takes an ecosystem,
Yeah.
I think you're right that collaboration and partnerships really do, accelerate what the mission can be. You talked about something. You talked about marketers' need for resources, and I think that one critical aspect of See Her is a quite extraordinary research you
Mhm.
have, which is the GEM score, or the gender equality measurement. Can you talk a little bit about how it works?
Yes.
And maybe also tell us what the benefit is of a high GEM score.
Yes. So, first of all, again, we're talking about marketers, right? So, with marketers, you need KPIs, and ultimately, you need to be able to track progress. So, soon after SeeHer was launched, GEM, as you said, the gender equality measurement was also launched, and it is an in market consumer sample, 4 easy questions that basically gets to the heart of respectful, accurate portrayal. How characters, all characters are presented so that each question gets a score and then there's an aggregate score. And since we have been gem testing, if you will, we have amassed a database of over 300,000 pieces of content, both advertising as well as media content. We test in 14 different markets. We ask both men and women, and we give demographic breakdown. We've coded predictive themes and drivers. And in the United States, we also have the ability to do multicultural deep dives. So we can boost the sample to get an understanding of how Black, Hispanic, and API consumers are reacting to the piece of creative that's being tested. Why is all of that important, right? I think as marketers have recognized the multidimensionality of people, right? Consumers, how one consumer segment may feel about a particular piece of creative could be very different from another. And ultimately, if our mission is to drive business growth, we need to correlate that back to a measurement. And GEM allows us to do that. It is the industry gold standard for gender equality measurement, and it is the linchpin of our entire suite of tools that we offer as part of the membership.
Just one clarification. You said
Sure.
14 different markets. You
Yes.
mean 14 different countries, or
Yes. Global
yeah,
markets. Forgive
global
me. Yes.
markets. Yeah,
So
just curious. Yeah,
We measure in the markets that we measure in, the global markets, obviously the United States, but the other 13 markets in totality represent 87% of global advertising
I
spend.
see. Okay.
So
All right.
those are the reason why we pick the markets that we picked, again, is because these are the markets where the marketer is making significant investment.
Mhm, mhm. No, interesting. It's funny that even though you may be familiar with something, how much you actually don't know about it.
Exactly.
Now
Well,
I
that's
think
what these wonderful forums are for, right? Where we can dig into some of these nuances.
no, you're absolutely right. The well, you've got a lot of news to talk about. So, before we dig more onto some of the tools that you have, I really do want to turn to this new research.
Yes.
You partnered with Dentsu to do something called Global Perceptions of Progress on Gender Equality, which you took a look at. And as we're talking about global markets, this was in 5 markets. And while we're talking about markets, I realized the markets were the US and the UK, which probably have tremendous similarities. And then they were Japan, which probably makes sense for Dentsu's expertise, as well as India and Mexico. Any comments on why those markets, or did it just seem like a good random group?
No, actually, it was quite deliberate. This iteration, Global Perceptions of Progress, is a follow-up to a piece of research that we did with Dentsu in 2021, where we just measured the US. So we revisit the US as it relates to the questionnaire. And although Dentsu is headquarters in Japan, that isn't why we picked that market. We actually have done a lot of work with one of our member companies in Japan, a young woman at Comexposium, the president and CEO at their largest trade organization, who herself is committed to gender equality within her market, and ultimately has brought gem testing to Japan. And we wanted to look at that market. So it was, a wonderful coalescing of interests with our member and our member Dentsu from a partnership standpoint. And then we wanted to get a sense of Mexico and India, just because ultimately, if you think about the Indian marketplace and the expansion from a GDP as well as from a total population, women and girls will and do have significant economic growth opportunities there. And we wanted to see if they felt the same about brands and media. And similarly to Mexico, right? You can't say that you're global and not look, at the southern part of our hemisphere. So we added in Mexico City. And truly, although there were nuances in each of the markets, Deborah, the thing that stands out is that all consumers, wherever it is that they sit, feel that media and marketers have an obligation to transform culture and change society. And yet, people, consumers, don't fully feel seen, heard, and valued by the messages that they're tuning into. Only 16% actually feel that media and marketers see them. And then there are some individual nuances within those countries that we looked at. And some of those nuances, have to do with where the benchmark is. So as you said, the US and the UK are similar. The benchmark there is higher and far more intersectional. So when we talk about the intersectionality, we at SeeHer look at the 7 tenets, right? So it's of course gender, but it's also race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, ability, and body type. Depending on where you go to other global markets, they don't have the same level of nuance or multidimensionality as marketers and media are communicating to consumers, it's gotten tricky. So some of that has influenced the numbers, right? Further along in the journey, and far more people to represent accurately, respectfully, and authentically.
No, you're right. And I look also at a market like India, which on the one hand has tremendous sophistication, but then on another hand, we've done so many case studies i- for our Marketing Makes a World of Difference initiative that show a lot of programs trying to help a lot of young girls in poorer sections of India,
Yeah.
not only build confidence, find ways to figure out how to get jobs. So there's a lot going on. You talk about multidimensionality, but they're also within the whole economic strata of some countries. There's
What's
probably
so
big
in
divides.
Exactly. An interesting statistic from the study is 72% of Indian consumers, so men and women, believe that it is the woman's primary responsibility to drive change in gender equality. And actually, um, we find that in most markets, it's women's work. And yet, what I think is so interesting, and we talk about in the mission, the next generation, we know in the US very specifically that Gen Z feels that it's everybody's responsibility to drive gender equality. And I believe that it's the next generation of consumers who have grown up to be the most diverse and the most technologically sophisticated, who will absolutely be able to recognize as this is a people issue, not just a woman issue.
No, it's interesting because I think of, if we bring it back to brands, you think so much about those famous Tide ads in India, and who does the wash, and the progression of them in terms of different generations thinking about
Yes,
what their role is. It's very interesting. Now, let me ask you something else about the study, which
sure.
is maybe a little bit more troubling. Um, there were some talking about benchmarking. There were some things that came up that looked like there's been a little bit of backslipping. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say a little.
Mhm.
I think it's very troubling, and I'll speak to the U.S. most specifically. Um, Not only has the trend in this study rolled back, but also our GEM benchmarks have also fell below the 100 index. And we can slice and dice that in a variety of different ways, right? Like that's research. I'll answer in two ways. I think consumers are demanding far more, right? Representation, accurate portrayal, that's table stakes. Consumers are looking for things to be far more nuanced than that. And when I talk about those 7 tenets, right? Does someone of a certain age with a body type that isn't a size 4, of a particular race and their culture comes through, right? That level of detail and nuance in storytelling takes it to a whole other level of authenticity versus, are women on screen? Are they showing up respectfully? Right? Like, so one-dimensional woman representation, respectful, multi-dimensional, highly nuanced, right? So in the US market, very specifically, it's table stakes to just have women. I think the other point about the benchmarks falling back is that we as an industry are a fickle bunch, right? Ultimately think about the headlines. It's the metaverse, it's AI. There are so many new developments and disruptions that take place in the advertising industry at large. Gender equality cannot be a month du jour. It really needs to be a priority 24/7, 365 days a year. It needs to be woven into every single communication that a marketer puts out, regardless of the platform. And it has to be at the very top of the funnel, Deborah. It can't just be, as we're releasing this, kind of a check it off the box. And it's a practice, which is why we launched at the start of Women's History Month our pledge to embed, right? If you make a commitment to embed gender equality best practices, our suite of tools, our GEM measurement, that exists throughout your work streams ecosystem. And it becomes an always on proposition. And that proposition, like I said, drives business growth and should not just be left towards the cultural moment of Women's History Month.
So yeah, I agree with you. I'd like to talk a little bit more about your pledge, and I'm
Sure.
curious, was it in reaction to some of the results you've seen in this study that you came up with the pledge, or was it something that you were planning?
Well, I would say that the study reinforced our need for it. With the GEM benchmark sliding, and additionally, in order to grow the movement, we need scale and we need participation, right? We need to be able to hold up continued examples of success. So the pledge allows us to do that. Not only are we looking for our member base, but also the entire ANA member base and the industry to participate, regardless of whether you're a member or not, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, to be a movement, we all have to recognize the importance of what portrayal and representation means for business and for societal norms.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're going to allow anyone who's interested to embed the pledge. What does that mean? What does it
Yes.
mean? Do they are there something they download? Is it a set of tools? Is it a sign up commitment? What is it? And does taking the pledge then mean that you're going to also ask them to take the next step and be a member, or is there a lower tier of membership involvement, or what does it mean?
Well, first of all, when GEM was launched, it was launched as a gift to the industry. It is open sourced, so anybody can GEM test. I think the benefit of being a member is that you get the analysis, you get category information, predictive themes and drivers, as well as our team's expertise in walking you through the data. Every piece of thought leadership, like global perceptions of progress, we launch it to the industry first, right? The benefit of membership is that we dig deeper into it. We are able to pull forth additional data for one of our members in a market and correlate it to their activities, their strategic objectives and strategies, of which we're very intimately involved with because of the white glove service that we provide to our members. So there's something for everyone, right? Our goal is we are here as an industry resource. We have the world's greatest marketers that are currently our members. We encourage others to join us, at whatever financial contribution they're able to make, and allow us to guide and teach and provide so that you have the opportunity to grow your business and do what your cultural role for society may be as part of your own strategy.
Yeah, and I'm also sure that there's a lot of marketers that do want to stand up and say that by being a member, it shows their commitment to doing everything they can to help with this issue, and particularly on certain products that really
Yes,
make a difference to
yes.
whether they're purchased by women or they're for women. Let me ask you that's a wonderful thing to launch in a month like this, and I applaud you for it. That's really wonderful news. But I think from what I'm hearing, is that you're also doing things at another level, because I believe that you're going to some college campuses through the ANA's Educational Foundation to actually create a gender equity certificate. So tell us what that means, but more importantly, what it means to the marketing industry.
Yes. So this has been a passion project and a fantastic collaboration internally. The Association of National Advertisers Education Foundation, my partner, Gordon McLean, and I, with an esteemed academic advisory board and the input of industry, have in fact launched a certificate program around gender equity. And our goal there, again, it ties back to our mission. We want the next generation of marketers to be trained so that when they enter organizations, they are fully aware of GEM, the suite of tools, the history, and what they can do as a new employee to make sure that they don't perpetuate these bias and stereotypes. In addition to the students, we also are letting industry know. For students and academia, let me just say, this is a gift also. It is free. There is no cost to participate and get the certificate. There's also teaching guides that the professors are able to use to embed the course into their classroom work. But for industry, Deborah, we think there's a real opportunity as well. If you are managing a complex, small or large marketing organization, SeeHer Education allows you to benchmark, level set, and upskill your own employees. And for a small contribution, to the mission and the movement, we will offer the curriculum to the company, as well as do a onboarding session with their leadership as well as with academia, and walk through highlights, best practices in a very bespoke way to align with the objectives and strategies of the organization.
No, that's quite remarkable, and I do love it. It seems that we've come circular in our themes, because there's not that many organizations that think about the next generation, and you're not only putting it into the language of your mission, you're actually doing things that will enable it to happen, and I just find that just wonderful, wonderful. So anyway, you've just gone through a couple of initiatives, and I think that we could probably spend hours talking more about the depth of the GEM resources, as well as other things that you have in store. So let's just end with teasing us a little bit about what else might be going on. And I do have to comment, you've just been in your role as president of SeeHer for just over a year. And it seems that there's been a tremendous amount of movement forward. So just give us a hint of what's to come.
Well, you will see more of the pledge. It is not a 1 month and done proposition. It truly is the flag that we'll be waving all year. And coming in May is our first ANA SeeHer Gender Equality Conference, May 2nd and 3rd in New York City, where again, attendance from industry, not just our members, is encouraged. Join us, hear from experts that have already leaned in, and find out how you can do more for your business. So this sampling to industry we've not done before, and I'm thrilled that we have the opportunity. again, operationalizing SeeHer within the broader ANA and being able to tap into resources like that to bring the movement along, but also bring the industry along is just one example of what we have on tap. And that's just May.
No, that sounds wonderful, and I hope to join you there. And I think that's a nice place to stop because that will enable us to continue a little further down the road when we can hear more about that and some of the other initiatives. It's been wonderful talking with you. I'm just very much impressed with everything that you're taking on, and I do have to candidly admit that I fully didn't understand the scope of how SeeHer has grown. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me during Women's History Month, and it has been such a pleasure and delight.
Wonderful. Talk to you again soon.
The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.